Stage is set in Houston. I'm Devin Dwyer. 10 candidates, one night. Will this be a turning point in the Democratic race?
And we are losing that kind of respect all around the world.
That is what demagogues do, not presidents of the United States.
Build the America that works for all of us.
Our whole team is here. What they'll be watching for Thursday, what the candidates need to do to break out. And we'll show you around this beautiful set and the great city of Houston. How is the immigration debate playing here? And why is the space race heating up at NASA? We're out at the Johnson Space Center right now in the briefing room. Hey everybody, hello from Houston. I'm Devin Dwyer. We're coming to you live from Texas Southern University inside this pretty incredible debate hall. We'll dive into the state of play in the Democratic race coming up. But first, I want to start with some headlines that we're covering here at ABC News right now, including some breaking news out of the White House. A short time ago, President Trump announced that he's planning a new possible ban on non-tobacco flavored vaping products after that recent surge in lung illnesses linked to e-cigarettes.
We are looking at vaping very strongly. It's very dangerous. Children have died, people have died, and the acting commissioner is somebody that's a true expert on it, as much as you can be an expert on a brand new subject. And we're going to have some very strong rules, regulations.
The president also confirmed he's nearing a decision on new gun violence prevention measures in the wake of the deadly mass shootings this summer. He said he spoke today for 40 minutes by phone with three senators, a Democrat and Republican, about his package. We will see. He says it's coming in the next 24 to 48 hours. Meanwhile, in North Carolina, a big win for Republicans there overnight in the special election for the U.S. House. Republican Dan Bishop defeated Democrat Dan McCready by just 2 percentage points. But that narrow margin could be a warning sign for President Trump, who won the same area by 12 points in 2016. We have former North Dakota Senator Heidi Heitkamp. She's standing by for her take on what all of this means. And today marks 18 years since the country experienced the September 11th attacks. And today we watched a lot of moments of silence. The nation pausing to remember that fateful morning, both at the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, Shakespeare, Pennsylvania. The names of the dead were read once again today, 18 years later. And then there's this new site this year at Ground Zero, a 9/11 Memorial Glade. This is something that's dedicated to those who were exposed to toxins in the aftermath of those attacks, and remembering all those first responders who rushed there to the scene. Well, the political world is descending on Houston today as the candidates make their final preparations for tomorrow night's debate. 10 candidates, one night on this stage. It'll be a big moment, and the team is here to talk about it. Rick Klein, our political director, is here, and our terrific political reporter, Rachel Scott, who's been out on the trail. We'll get into all this. Rick, got to start with you because you've been planning this pretty extraordinary event. The race has been pretty stable heretofore. This could be a turning point.
This is a major marking point in the race because you have all the candidates on one stage, one night for the first time so far this cycle, which means you have the top candidates, the people that are most likely to win the Democratic nomination, frankly, together on one place at one time. But, of course, all that togetherness doesn't make headlines, and that isn't what creates the kind of separation that a lot of those candidates are going to look for. When you look at center stage, it is almost an existential crisis or moment for the Democrats, a decision point. When you see Elizabeth Warren, Joe Biden, they represent much different strands, much different strains of the Democratic Party. Ultimately, they're going to have to make a decision as voters.
And Rachel, you were out on the campaign trail in New Hampshire last weekend. Almost all the candidates were there.
Just 19.
Just 19 of them. Which is a good reminder that just because the stage only has 10, those other 9 have not yet bowed out. So we'll see where that goes. But I was surprised by the number of candidates you talked to who actually explicitly pointed out that this debate was a major marker for them. That's not something we normally hear. They were setting the stakes high.
Yeah, that's right, Devin. I mean, Mayor Pete Buttigieg told me that he believes the nominee is coming from this stage right behind us, that the nominee is going to be on that stage. But of course, what everyone's going to be looking at, right, that face-off between Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren on the stage for the first time. I asked Joe Biden how his message breaks through standing next to Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. He says he doesn't have to break through. That will be interesting. I also talked to Senator Elizabeth Warren and I asked her about this debate. She downplayed, any of this hoopla, any of this, hype that of her and Biden facing off. But she said this is her moment. She sees it to just tell Americans about her vision for the country. And I also got a chance to talk to a lot of voters. There were so many undecided voters in New Hampshire, and voter after voter told me that, listen, they're going to be watching this debate to see who can beat President Trump. That's the #1 issue that's on their mind. Some of them even told me they're willing to compromise even some of their values on other issues like health care if it means that candidate is going to beat the president in 2020.
And Rick, we do know that there is somewhat of a different format in this debate, aside from the fact it's only 10 candidates. Talk to us about that. How are the questions going to be asked, and what can we tell our viewers about how the questions are being prepared today by the moderators?
Well, we've got 4 moderators: George Stephanopoulos, David Muir, Lindsay Davis, and Jorge Ramos from Univision, our partner in this Spanish language. And each question that they pose, a fresh question, is going to be a minute 15, a little bit longer than the minute that we've seen in the past, and 45 seconds for rebuttals and responses. So our hope is to get through a whole lot of topics, cover a lot of ground. You can't get to everything. We're trying to obviously find some areas where the candidates want to have that debate. Ultimately, it's their debate to have.
And we heard George Stephanopoulos this morning on Good Morning America talk about this. He says he doesn't want to be part of the debate. He doesn't want to be in the spotlight, but they are actively working on finding ways to draw out the contrast among the candidates.
I think the watchword around these things is to remember that these are the men and women that are putting themselves out there to try to become presidents of the United States. And you want to create a forum that allows them to have a robust engagement on the ideas, on the substance, on the values, on the vision that they bring. And they're laying out there. These are 10 people that all come from different backgrounds, different accomplishments. There's historic diversity, gender diversity, racial and ethnic diversity, background diversity, age diversity, candidates in their 30s up through their late 70s. And all of that speaks to a Democratic Party that is trying to find out what it is in this moment.
In a changing country, we're here in Houston, one of the most diverse cities in the United States, in a state that's turning purple. Rachel, the president, watching this all very closely. Texas close to his heart. Non-committal today when asked whether he would actually watch this. But you cover the Trump campaign. His team is taking notes tonight.
Yeah, and I was just talking to his team down in Fayetteville, where the president had that rally just on Monday. And I think his team is looking at this and saying, all right, we're interested to see what happens when these 10 candidates are all on one stage on one night. What exactly is going to happen? And their strategy, obviously, is still going to be to attack the Democrats here. They have a robust kind of online operation going. They're going to have counter-programming events here, just like they had for the other 2 debates. But their eyes are going to be on what happens, who will be fighting against who. But Biden even has warned against that. When I interviewed him just a few weeks ago recently, he told me, let's not form a circular firing squad. These attacks on the Obama-Biden administration, he was pushing away from those. Julian Castro, I talked to him over the weekend. He said, listen, it's time for a new generation, and he hopes that shows through on the stage. And interesting enough, though, Cory Booker promised no Kool-Aid jokes, and Beto O'Rourke said maybe he'll cuss. So we'll see how that plays out.
We have the beep button ready, I'm sure, in the control room here in the ABC News truck. Guys, thank you so much for previewing the debate. You will be back. We're going to give our viewers now a closer look at the stage behind me, how it's been set, and what you can hope to see tomorrow night. Here's some of that. We're inside the big arena on campus ahead of Thursday night's 3rd Democratic presidential debate. And I want to bring you inside the debate hall, give you an up-close look as preparations are just wrapping up on the stage. Here it is behind us, an army of maintenance staff and construction crews still putting all this gear together. You can see behind me here, the cameras are set. They will capture the candidates as they come out. There are only 10 candidates in this debate. That's half the stage from the first 2 presidential debates when the field was 20. And here we are, 35 tractor trailers worth of equipment to set up this beautiful set here. A small army putting it together over a couple days. 115,000 pounds of hanging equipment, enough pixels on these screens to light up Times Square. 35 cameras going to capture those candidates. Here in the seats, there'll be 3,500 guests. Many of these are handpicked by the candidates. Also, some community members will be here. The Democratic National Committee, of course, has a say on who gets to attend the debate. They're one of the co-sponsors of this. All right, I'm joined by two plugged-in Democrats right here in the hall. The great Heidi Heitkamp of the state of North Dakota, former senator, and Yvette Simpson, CEO of Democracy for America. It's great to have you both. You're both ABC News contributors, we should say, as well. So we're going to get into what you're going to be watching tomorrow night. But Yvette, I'm going to start with you. Who do you think has the most at stake in this third debate?
You know, I think Joe Biden, for sure. You know, you've got all of the front runners kind of on the same stage. It's the first time we're seeing everybody who probably has a great chance on one stage. And now he versus Liz Warren. He's already had his chance against Kamala and Corey. We'll see how he stands up. I think for everybody, it's a high stakes, right? This is the first time we really are seeing the top 5, top 7 together. They're going to have to distinguish themselves based on tone and energy, right? But also on issues. And so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Heidi, you were on our Powerhouse Politics podcast last week talking about the need and the desire from many Democratic voters to really start winnowing this thing down. It's just a behemoth of a campaign with 19 candidates. Is this effectively a winnowing? I mean, are we down to 10? Are the other 9?
I think it's going to be very, very hard for someone who's not on this stage to emerge as the eventual nominee. Now, if you have a lot of money, like Tom Steyer, maybe that works for you and you make it into the next debate. But I think it's going to be extraordinarily difficult because this is a casting call for who's going to run for president carrying the Democratic banner. And if you're not on this stage, I think it's going to be very, very difficult to find your way into that final nomination process and win.
Our new poll that's out today had some very interesting data on head-to-heads between any of these candidates and Donald Trump nationally. Looked very good for Democrats. It had basically everybody on stage tonight. I think we have the graphic tomorrow night, rather, beating Donald Trump in a head-to-head. But of course, you guys know better than anybody. This comes down to the Electoral College, though. This comes down to you need 270 to win. States like North Dakota, Michigan, Midwest, Ohio. That's where it really matters. It's not as rosy a picture there. I mean, do you get the sense that this is sort of giving a false narrative to what could be a much tougher campaign in those states?
I think that the North Carolina congressional race yesterday was telling. Big win in the suburbs and losing even bigger in rural America. And I've been, the Democrat. And I think that foretells a real story where they're going to have to start really thinking about how do you broaden the appeal. Now, there's 2 ways of thinking about that. You can energize your base and get people enthusiastic about your ideas, or you can take a look at kind of the old school, you know, who can we get in the tent voting for us? And I think you've got to start addressing some of the concerns of Democrats in rural America, not just Republicans, but Democrats who didn't show up in rural America to vote for a Democratic candidate.
And I would continue to argue that expanding the electorate, right? So Barack Obama won Ohio in 2012. He won Ohio in 2018. He won Pennsylvania. He won Wisconsin. He won these states. If we can do that, and he was the hope and change energy candidate. He was the underdog at the time. Once you got to Iowa, everything shifted. So I think the strategy should be to energize the base, expand the electorate, get those folks who don't traditionally vote to vote, and I think that's how we win.
And are you optimistic that Texas is someplace that could actually be in play in 2020?
I mean, I was in Texas last year for the federal races, the congressional races, and we saw a lot of great wins there. And so I think Texas is in play. It's now a purple state.
I think it's interesting because people always talk about Texas. Texas is a +6 or +8 state. Yesterday, the Democrat came within 2 percentage points in a +12. So can we just kind of all agree that Texas is a place that has potential? It's also expensive, and whether you decide you're going to invest resources here is going to be
Democrats
a pretty interesting
here are
point.
a totally different breed, though. We did some reporting yesterday. Fort Bend County, one of the purple counties, talked to a lot of Democrats, and they said if I was living in California, I'd be a Republican. So there is an interesting mix here. Georgia and other states is turning purple, but I asked them, could you elect? Could you vote for a socialist
So this is where
here?
I'm going to put in a pitch for actually beginning to understand what's happening in rural America. The Democrats in Texas are no different than Democrats in North Dakota, and they feel disaffected. They feel disconnected with their party. We've got to reconnect them. We can do that on the values of family, the values of making sure that people can earn a living in this country, and that we don't leave anyone behind.
And there are a lot of young voters, new voters, millennials. There are a lot of brown voters who have never been engaged in this state that are probably riled up by everything that's happening at the border, that's been happening under Trump's administration. And so I think we can get those folks out, too.
Fascinating backdrop to have this third debate here. Love having you guys on both wings of the Democratic Party right here. This is
let's
great.
do all the things so that we can really win.
And braving, we should tell our audience.
The fight is not between the two of us.
No.
The fight is to win this race
hear that
for the American
from you loud
people.
and clear. Right. Senator Heidi Heitkamp from North Dakota. Thank you so much. Yvette Simpson for Democracy for America. And behind us, if you can hear here. They're still rehearsing for the debate, so you hear them trying out the teleprompter, the announcement. And those folks aren't the candidates. Those are stand-ins wearing signs for the candidates. So we won't zoom in on their faces and embarrass them. Exactly. Thank you both very much. Let's go now to Johnny Verhoeven, who covers the campaign for us. He's out here on the campus of Texas Southern University. Johnny, because I wanted you to give us a look at how these candidates are actually preparing. You've been tracking their strategies headed into this. How are the frontrunners doing that?
Well, that's right, Devin. I'm out here. You can see I'm on the campus of Texas Southern University. It's probably a little bit hotter out here than it is in there. And some students came by earlier and asked me how to get into the debate. And I asked them, and I told them to go ask Devin Dwyer, so just be prepared for that. But to your question, I just, there's a pretty interesting contrast between how the frontrunners have been preparing. Both Senator Elizabeth Warren and Senator Bernie Sanders have been out on the campaign trail. Senator Warren was in Austin yesterday, where she held a rally, and she kind of, shoved off these questions about whether or not this is a big confrontation with Vice President Joe Biden. They have not been on the same stage before, as you've been discussing earlier. Senator Bernie Sanders has been on the campaign trail in Iowa earlier this week, trying to court college voters. The former vice president has been down for the most part for the last week. He's been meeting with advisors and kind of getting ready for this debate, which is going to be a crucial one. Like I said, it'll be the first time he'll be on stage with Senator Warren. Devin.
And what do we know, Johnny, about how some of the lower polling candidates are preparing? I know that Julian Castro held a big rally this week here in his home state of Texas. Beto O'Rourke, sort of the same thing. What do we know about how those second-tier candidates are doing?
Right. Well, you mentioned those two Texans in the race, former HUD Secretary Julian Castro and former Texas Congressman Beto O'Rourke. They've been emphasizing their Texas roots. Like you said, Castro held a rally in Houston earlier this week. O'Rourke released the names of his Texas leadership team. Other candidates like Andrew Yang, we've heard, have been playing basketball to get loose. And I just wanted to point to a tweet that Andrew Yang sent out just about less than an hour ago. He said, "For those wondering, I will be crowd surfing in sandals at Thursday's debate." I can't confirm whether or not that's going to happen, but that's just on Andrew Yang's Twitter feed. But like you said, for these lower polling candidates, for these candidates kind of towards the edges of the stage, this is a big moment. This is the first time we've had one night of debate, and this is the first time that they'll be actually able to stand out and really contrast themselves with the frontrunners.
All right, Johnny Verhoeven, our political reporter, braving the heat here in a sweltering Houston out there on the campus of Texas Southern. Thank you so much for that, Johnny. We will be watching the candidates as they converge on this hall tomorrow night. I'm joined now by Rachel Scott, again, our political reporter here on stage, because one of the things that we've been doing in the lead up to this debate, Rachel, is taking a closer look at some of the issues that will come up. Immigration, one of the biggest likely to be talked about on Thursday night. You got a closer look today at one family and the immigration asylum process in this country. Tell us about it.
Yeah, Devin, I did. This woman that we spoke to, she escaped from El Salvador, she says, a horrendous condition. She was fearing for her life. She really describes it as a life or death situation. She found a safe haven through Interfaith Ministries here in Houston that helped her get on her feet. And now they're starting a new life here in Houston, her and her son. Listen to her story.
These 3 photos are the only tangible memories Flor Marquez has left of her life in El Salvador.
De la noche a la mañana tuvimos que agarrar camino porque empezaron a amenazarnos, a pedirnos dinero, que si no lo dábamos, pues teníamos que, pues, con la vida de uno. Entonces, yo tenía un trabajo estable y tuve que dejar todo tirado.
Fleeing gang violence, Marquez and her husband knew the only way out for their son was to leave, but only had enough money for one of them to make the trip with him.
Yo tuve que dejar a mi esposo por cuestión de dinero que no lo pudimos traer. Mi esperanza era traerlo, pero él hace un año falleció, no alcanzó a reunirse con nosotros. No lo volví a ver.
Marquez would make that trek. She and her son were granted asylum here in the U.S.
Gracias a Dios, Dios ha sido grande y me ha ido presentando gente en el camino. No pagué nada y la abogada se esmeró por ganar el caso de nosotros y el 10 de mayo del 2018 nos dieron el asilo. Me siento segura.
Starting over in America comes with challenges of its own, but fearing for safety is no longer one of them.
When I was in El Salvador, I heard that this country was a great country and I had good opportunities if I come here. I feel like my life's getting better.
What do you wish people knew about people like you and about your story? What do people get wrong about asylum seekers?
No nos venimos porque no queremos venir, sino que es por la situación de nuestro país. A veces por la violencia y a veces por la pobreza. Yo siento que es como una sobrevivencia y sentimos que aquí es nuestra salvación.
And just a really powerful story. She was so emotional, and she just, when we did that interview, she just got off of almost like a 12-hour-long shift, just trying to work as hard as she can. She works at Burger King, trying to provide for her family, but you heard her there, and that was really the point that she drove home, is that this isn't a question of wanting to come to the U.S. She felt like she had to, and that just horrible and just heartbreaking story about leaving her husband behind, and that was the last time that she ever got to see him.
And a success story for someone seeking asylum. We hear about all the trouble that asylum seekers have. She came in, as you said, in 2018, or got the approval for her asylum claim in 2018 during the Trump administration, and it can be done. But I'm joined now by immigration attorney Kimberly Branzik to broaden this out a little bit, Kimberly, because we do also know that the hurdles that have been set up now for asylum seekers have been much harder to clear. Tell us about how complicated that system is now.
So the asylum process has always been complicated, but now asylum seekers are facing roadblock after roadblock from the Trump administration, who is trying to curtail the people who are coming from Central America at our southern border. Asylum has always been difficult in the United States. The burden is on the applicant to prove that they are going to be persecuted by their government or a third actor that the government is unable to control.
That credible fear we hear about all the time. They have to demonstrate that before a judge of sorts. But we hear from the Trump administration, to your point, and I heard this week here in Houston from many Texans who support legal immigration, this claim, this idea that the asylum system is being taken advantage of, that human traffickers are for profit, funneling people up here, telling them what to say when they come across. Is any of that true? Do you get the sense that it is being abused, that there are some bad actors in this pool?
I think there are always going to be some bad actors, but the majority of people who are coming here from Central America are truly fearing for their lives. And we have processes in place, like the credible fear interview, that prevent someone who doesn't have a claim for asylum from being able to present their case before an immigration judge.
How did this family, Rachel, talk to us a little bit more about your experience with this Salvadoran family? How did they make it through the process? Did they have an advocate, an immigration attorney? How were they actually able to jump through all these complicated hoops? What does it take?
Yeah, I mean, they describe this moment of coming to a country where you don't know anyone and you have to find some place to live. You don't have a job, you don't have any money with you, you're coming with the clothes on your back. Luckily for them, they had interfaith ministries, which really set up and kind of walked them through this process, helped them get a pro bono lawyer and go through this process of seeking asylum. But it doesn't stop there. There was a whole bunch of cultural things that they had to relearn as well. And talking with interfaith ministries, some of the administrators there, they were saying even something as simple as learning how to work a microwave, right? Or the types of jobs that, some of these folks can get. Luckily for them, they match them with companies here that pay a little bit above minimum wage, but it's starting all over right from the beginning. And they were lucky to have that organization that helped them through.
Kimberly, the faith organizations and charities have done such a heroic job helping these people coming across in this crush, and I know you're familiar with that. Let me ask you another criticism that I heard in just talking to voters here in Texas, and that is, how come a lot of these people don't just seek asylum in another country that they passed through? And we've started to see now the Trump administration sort of force or require, it's being hung up in court, but to try to require these families to seek asylum in Mexico. Talk to us about the complications of that process.
So the new third country asylum rule, like you said, there's a nationwide injunction that was passed yesterday by the Northern District of Texas. But these countries, Guatemala and El Salvador, which would be third countries for Hondurans and Salvadorians, they don't have the systems in place to process these claims and offer these people the protection they need while their claims are being heard.
So it's not as easy as some on the surface might make it seem.
correct.
All right, Kimberly Branzik, an immigration attorney here in Houston. Thanks so much for coming in. Nice to meet you. Rachel, thank you for bringing us that reporting. And finally, since we're in Houston, we decided to take a closer look at the space industry here, which is a big part of this economy. The space shuttle program may be gone, but there is new excitement about ingenuity in the space program and a new space race that's bubbling up. Our Janet Weinstein went out to NASA's Johnson Space Center to take a closer look.
I've been at NASA for almost 30 years now, and this is the peak of excitement that we've had. The National Space Council was convened, put back together, and they gave a recommendation to the president that we should go back to the moon and basically use the moon as the backyard to go to Mars. So we're in the robotics area of Building 9 at the Johnson Space Center. We do all types of development here. We develop the rovers, the small pressurized rover called SEV, Space Exploration Vehicle, and the unpressurized rover. This is where it's developed. With this vehicle, you can actually get closer to observations than you can in a suit. And then it has independent suspension, so you can literally just barely touch off on that saw. Currently, we were working on the unpressurized rover. A rover will be waiting for crew to return in 2024 to the moon, and when they get off of the lander, they will have a rover there waiting for them. Wheel modules will point in all directions, and these couplings down here will let us pick up what we call portable utility pallets, and that will have extra energy, solar arrays, and the like. A new thing to this generation of NASA is that we're going back to a dirty place. We've been in an environment where we flew shuttle that was clean. We're on space station that's clean. Now we're going back to a dirty environment, get our boots dirty. It's exciting to know that our generation is making that one little step that allows that to happen.
The future of space happening now at the Johnson Space Center here in Houston. Our thanks to Janet Weinstein for bringing us that piece. Thanks for watching the briefing room today here from Houston. We are here all day today on ABC News Live and all day tomorrow with special coverage of the ABC News Democratic debate from Houston, the third and first one-night debate. 10 candidates only. You can only catch it here on ABC News. Starts at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC News Live. Of course, you can catch us on Hulu Live, Roku, Facebook Watch, abcnews.com, the ABC News app, of course, as well. I'm Devin Dwyer in Houston. Hope to see you back here tomorrow.